I'm joined now from Amman in Jordan by Caroline Anning. She's Save the Children's Syria Advocacy Manager. Caroline, thank you very much for your time. First of all, we hear a lot of the heroic efforts of the White Helmets. This is a large number that have been rescued. Why now?
Well, I think what we're seeing is a really rapid escalation that's happened across southern Syria. As your correspondent was mentioning, there's been really heavy violence there over the last month, rapid changes in control across front lines. And obviously, the White Helmets, donors or allies in the West, felt that now was the time to try and pull them out. But I think this is a significant number of people, obviously, of humanitarians who have played a critical role in helping provide civil defence, pulling people from the wreckage after airstrikes, etc. But there's a huge number of humanitarians who are left, including our partners, the partners of many other international NGOs who've been delivering aid throughout this conflict in southern Syria and across the country, who also need to be protected and enabled to continue their work.
So as you say, aid workers that are left there, do they also need to be rescued? I mean, how can they stay safe and still support the Syrian people throughout this conflict?
I think supporting the Syrian people is a really vital part of that. And so many of our partners and staff will stay despite incredible risk and have been working despite incredible risk throughout 7 years of the conflict. I don't know whether it's a sustainable solution to try and evacuate everybody, because then who is left to help the children, the families, the civilians who are left behind? You know, our partners are running schools in IDP camps, in conflict zones, in basement shelters sometimes when there's heavy airstrikes. They're taking aid across conflict lines. Their presence and their work is vital, and I think what's really important is that the international community, the parties to the conflict, all work together. I think we can all agree that Syrian children deserve the chance to go to school, to have enough to eat, to have medical care wherever they are. So what we need to do is find ways to enable humanitarians and protect them to continue doing that work.
As you say, humanitarian workers need to stay there and support the local population, but it's not inconceivable that another rescue like this might need to happen again. Do you think Israel and the IDF should do more to help people who need to leave the country?
Well, the number of people that are left on that border with the occupied Golan Heights isn't very clear at the moment. What we know is that there's a huge number of civilians there. What we've called for is that across the board, whether it's the Jordanian border, the Israeli border, any neighbouring country facilitates evacuation of, for example, sick or injured children if that's necessary. But also what we're calling for is for aid to be allowed in. So what we've seen over the last few weeks is that huge numbers of people, something like 160,000 people or more, have fled their homes in South Damascus because of southern Syria, because of the fighting there. It's temperatures of upwards of 45 degrees C, very little shelter, very little food or water. It's really urgent that we are able to get help to those people. So in addition to any evacuations, that would be a real ask, is that we're able to get humanitarian aid into those populations.
And just very briefly, those volunteers that have been rescued, what happens to them now?
So this isn't something that we as Save the Children would know about. We're not involved in any way with this. My understanding is only what's been in the reports, which is that they'll be moved to Jordan and then potentially go on to Western countries afterwards.
Right, Caroline Anning from Jordan Amman, Save the Children's Syria Advocacy Manager, thank you very much. Well, gunmen in South Africa have shot dead 11 taxi drivers who were on their way back to Johannesburg after attending the funeral of a colleague. The gunmen ambushed them and, using automatic rifles, peppered the vehicle with bullets. Well, earlier I spoke to South African journalist Ayanda Thlongo about what the motivation could be behind the attack. Well, now, if you're afraid of heights like me, brace yourself. Spectators in Paris have been thrilled and been rather nervous by watching a tightrope walker performing in front of one of the city's most iconic sites. Andy Beat has the story.
They call Paris the City of Lights. For one afternoon in the Montmartre neighbourhood, it was the City of Heights. With the skyline as her backdrop, French tightrope walker Tatiana Mossier-Begonia started 35 metres above Montmartre Hill and inched her way towards one of the city's most famous sites, the Sacré-Cœur Basilica. She wasn't the only one hanging by a thread. Down below, they looked on and filmed with wonder, admiration, but also a little fear. This stunt done without a security cable.
It was very surprising and very dangerous. It really impressed me, actually. I noticed that she was not secured. There was a lot of acrobatics. I had a really good time.
Even getting to the starting position would scare off the faint-hearted, but this stunt has been a year in preparation, all to be carried out one step at a time. Waiting for her at the end, members of the city's chamber orchestra, who provided the soundtrack for this Parisian high-wire act.
Every walk has something unique because it takes place somewhere different. Here I had the chance to face a monument, which has never happened to me before. It was something new and it was magical.
34-year-old Tatiana Mossio says she grew up on a tightrope. She started when she was just 8. So while she's had time to develop her nerves of steel, her spectators have some catching up to do. Andy Beat, BBC News.
That is a brave woman and not a profession I would be suited for. You can catch me on Twitter. I'm at Regid Ahmed BBC. Now coming up next is Sport Today. Do stay with BBC World News.